Yo, what is going on, everybody? Sitting here with my main man, Chris Jamieson. We are going to go through the new deck that I've been playing, which has been doing super well, and it's different, so it's exciting to talk about it. How's it going, Chris?
It's good, good man. Getting some Netrunner in here on the holidays, which is always good.
You are on a nice little vacation too, from what I
Yeah.
hear.
So this is like a gift to the bad publicity people from Santa Nord.
Yes. So I'm gonna release this deck after I'm done playing in the StimHack League One finals, which will be against Paranoid tomorrow. But anyway, I've been super excited about this, so we'll just jump into it and talk about the deck, and then Jameson will chime in with questions or comments as he so chooses. But we're gonna start with the agenda. Simplest thing to start with. Astro script, three of them because never mind. Project Beal, same thing. We have the three for twos is the obvious choice here. NAPD for the tax seems very standard through these nine agendas here. But then we move on to the too good to be true, and this is simply for the tagging mechanism, which I'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah, this is definitely it's your typical NBN suite up until these two cards. Normally these would be breaking news, but you've got reasons to have them in, which will come to fruition later on.
Indeed. So, really cool card, actually, too good to be true. Simply for the fact that they can't avoid it. Once they access the card, they absolutely must take the tag, and that's essential. So, can use it as a trap, can throw it in archives, can throw it in a remote. They can access an R&D hand everywhere. So, from that sense, it's very strong that they are required to actually take the tag. My econ is probably um, it's a little light, but if the assets are rolling, obviously that's really good. It doesn't require a lot of money, so that's okay too. And then I do have a little bit of operation protection or operation backup, which I'll get to later. But these are obviously standard econ cards here. I don't think there's too much to say about that. Is there?
No, no. You got you got the pads and the marked accounts. I mean, this is a near Earth hub deck. We probably should say that, or I'll say in the description.
Oh yeah,
Um,
good call.
but so you're going to be making servers and drawing cards, and these are the ones you want. Um,
Bingo.
a little strange, I know, to some people to not see a hedge fund, though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I, I mean, I'm not just saying that it needs to be in here, but usually, it's the staple, right? Like it's the first card that you're putting in, and I mean, it's the first thing that glares out at me when a deck does not have hedge fund. You start to wonder where's the economy coming from. I know pop-up windows are down the road later. You can see it in the second block of cards here, and those are usually classified as economy cards as well. But do are you scared to play a deck without a hedge fund?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think, I mean, the hedge fund is obviously glaring. That's not there. I think just equally surprising or even more is maybe no sweeps week. Um,
Yeah, that was the next one, right? Because they say every faction has their go-to economy cards now. Like, is anyone making NB? Well, okay, so you are, but is there anyone else making NBN decks that don't have sweeps week in it?
not that I've seen. And maybe I've gotten criticism already for not playing it. So maybe I'll try to squeak it in. But at this point, I haven't felt a need to do it. So I just haven't.
Yeah. So
Um,
touch on your economy then
yeah.
for a bit. Like, how are you playing mid or early mid late game? Like, are you dry? Are you running very rich? Are you able to just cash in on those marked accounts all the time? It seems like though if these assets get bumped, you could be a little in trouble.
Yeah, and that's actually true. I do lean a lot on diversified portfolio, which
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we
is
should say that that's in there. Diversified
yeah,
portfolios
it
is
is.
down here.
Yeah. So, but again, it still backs up your point where if I don't have a lot of remotes, that card isn't as strong. But generally, at a minimum, I have four remotes, so I can at least get it for 3 credits, which is not great, but it's not horrible. And best case, I'm getting it for like 8 or 9 or 10 credits.
Well, you're creating your own sweeps week. You're in control of how many cards
Yeah, sort of in
you're
control. I mean, my biggest nightmare is Wizard, but I did take some precautions on that. We'll get to that.
perfect. So you've never been really in trouble for econ, right? Because I think that's the first criticism that people are going to jump out, like you said, is where's the sweeps?
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
and I for one am glad to see that you've gone a different route. Fantasy Flight has been pushing a horizontal game, and there's nothing more horizontal than this deck right now.
I agree. Yeah, this is as horizontal as it gets, especially with the asset choices too. Doing some cool things. So, anyway, yeah, let's move on to the meat of the deck because I think there's some cool stuff to talk
Yeah,
about here.
so you're at the daily business show.
Yeah, daily business show, big staple of the deck. It allows me to run like a one of psychographics because I can get to it. I mean, it's just an all around amazing card. I'm paying two. The charge cost is four. It's a remote to draw a card in of itself. It's a power card. I think it's a huge boost for NBN, and we'll probably see it in 90% of NBN decks going forward or something like that. Jackson Howard, I don't think we need to spend any time there.
No.
But the next six are really important. In fact, so important that it's 15 influence right here in your face. I'll just kind of outline. I mean, the combo here, I think jumps out at you, obviously, because the snare gives you the tag, it gives you 3 damage, and then a DRT is going to punish you for 2 more. Two dedicated response teams on the table, and they hit a snare, and it's game over, assuming they don't have a way of having more cards. So this is a huge combo, and the dedicated response team also pairs with Too Good to Be True, and my new favorite addition, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but Manhunt. This is an all-around power card, and it's nice to see it work in a deck because I don't know about you, Jamieson, but this is a card that when it came out, I was really excited about, but didn't really find a way to use it. And then when I started working on this deck, it can literally win you games, and that's what meat damage and damage in general, like that's the goal, is obviously to flatline, and it's nice to see this card doing that.
Yeah, and it was this is what kind of instigated the this Skype session at this time of day. It is when I get a message, from you, and it's it's blinking down on the bottom, and you're like, I have a dedicated response team deck. I'm like, when you get home from work, show it to me, because because I don't believe it. But yeah, I've seen this deck work wonders with this combination, and yeah, like you said, when this card came out, there was a lot of buzz about it, but it died really quickly. It was like a firework. It came, banged, and then you're on to the next uh, firework in the pack because nobody could pull it off properly.
Right.
I
Yeah.
and it's not even been something that you have to worry about playing because, like, let's be honest, like nobody brought this to tournaments.
No way. No, this deck. I don't think this. I saw this. I saw somebody play a variation of this a few days ago, and I lost like 3 or 4 times in a row to it. And every single game, I'm like, what do I do? I don't know how to play against this, and still didn't have any answers basically by the time I had played it 4 times. And I said, I got to build something like this. And That's exactly what it does is it freezes the runner because once they see a snare or they see a too good to be true, or even if they see a res dedicated response team with Manhunt live, that puts an unbelievable amount of pressure on them to trash it. They have to trash dedicated response team. And if I can get a little piece of ice behind it, like a quandary or a, even a data raven, or sometimes I don't even need to protect it. But what I find is that the runner is spending so much time worried about saving their life running remotes that they don't have the time and money to access agendas. And then by that time, I've popped my Sands and I'm scoring Astros and I'm winning the game.
Yeah, you're playing like almost a sleight of hand. You know, look what's going on over here. And while these people are chasing this, this white rabbit down the hole, you're possibly either setting them up for the kill, because it's just falling into place, or you're playing the near Earth hub game.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it plays two ways, and it's sort of like a scorch deck in that way, but it's a different variation of doing it. And I think, to repeat myself a little bit, but I think it's worth mentioning again. The key to this deck is the fact that the runner has to run the remotes. And heavy near Earth hub decks or heavy asset near Earth hub decks in the past um, have a weakness in this. It's a slight weakness in the sense that at a certain point in the game, the runner can just sort of um, ignore the remotes, not worry about them anymore. Where this deck, I could have match point on top deck in R&D, no ice on R&D, or just a couple pop up windows, and they can't run it because if it's a snare, they'll die.
Right, and what I really love about this idea is that it takes everything you know about playing near Earth hub and throws it out the window. Right, like if you're playing a near Earth hub standard, that we saw in Worlds, most people are going to throw down multi-access and just run the hell out of your R&D.
Yep.
Try and get the cards before uh, they get to your hand so they can be played. But looking at this, you got Manhunt, which is gonna slow them down. You have the snares sitting in R&D, doing a little more protection there, and you have the dedicated response teams. Like once they start seeing those, um, that switches their game frame up, and then you have the daily business show, which you're controlling what cards are at the top of your draw anyway. You're just basically, if they're in too deep, you just start burying your agendas, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's 9 times out of 10 what I do with the daily business shows. Just put them in the bottom of the deck where they can't find them. I'll take total control of the game with my remotes, or if I need agendas because I have a Astro scored or whatever, then I'll take that too. I'll just put it on a Sansan if I'm in that position of the game or whatever I need to do. So, daily business show makes the deck sing. Um, so yeah, I think that's really the meat of the deck right there. The actually we'll include Sansan in it. These 12 cards, dedicated response team, snare, and Sansan win games because they can't generally deal with all three of them. They have to at some point they have to decide I can't deal with that Sansan or I can't deal with the almost inevitably they'll always trash the DRT first because it's their life on the line. And that gives me windows to keep Sansan alive for a while. So, and they certainly don't have time to score or to trash my pad campaigns. Most times, they can't do that. So they just don't have time to get through everything.
So
So
can you talk about a little of what you're doing with snare? Are you just trying to cycle it into your R&D, with the Jacksons, after you've used it? Are you using it for hand protection, or are you actually installing it as a remote?
that's a great question. And I'm using the runner's tendencies against them there. So if I have a runner that's checking every remote, yeah, I'll throw it in a remote. If I have a runner that is, played a HQ interface, I'll probably try to keep them in hand. If they're playing R&D interface or they're shapers, I'm gonna try to recurse them into the R&D as much as possible. So I'm gonna play against the runner on that, and I think it's now saying that, and it's true with every deck, but I think with kill decks in particular, not that this is a kill deck per se, I get more agenda wins than I do kills, but the threat of the kill is always there, and I think to keep that, at least keep the threat alive, to be really good at it, and you see this in Jinteki too, you have to play the runner more than other decks, more than like the standard NEH. With standard NEH deck, you're playing your deck. You're playing the cards that come up, and you're scoring or whatever you're trying to do just right away. A deck like this, you have to think, what's the runner going to do? A little bit more than I think in another deck. And I think those actually makes the deck even a little bit more fun to play. But should we move on to the ice?
Yeah, because that's my next lead in here. Like, um, what do you got? Like 10 pieces.
Yeah. Yep. Um,
So walk us through this. We're coming to the barrier section, and we'll be
yeah.
leaving the barrier section pretty quickly.
Indeed, we will. Wall of Static. Yeah, yeah, I know. It should be wrapped around, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. Wall of Static's just my favorite card in terms of barrier. I love this card so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say this type of ice shows up in every deck that you build.
What's not to like about Wall of Static?
I'm not I'm not
Three.
I'm not downplaying it. I'm just pointing it out for those
Yeah,
for those
no.
that are keeping track at home in the bad publicity program. Your score says Wall of Static.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, come on. It's three credits, three strength, and the run. Boom. Done. Love it. Anyway, actually, Jameson, you were watching this game. It came to be a benefit because the guy was playing Inti, and it's a little bit harder to deal with than wrap around there. But anyway, who cares? It's one barrier, three versus two credits. It's a little bit stronger consistently, maybe a little weaker against Anarch. That's fine. Who cares?
Yeah.
Moving on.
No, you know what though, for deck discussions and stuff like that that we've had in the past, you've got me a believer in Wall of Static again over my last couple deck builds. You'll usually find one copy of Wall of Static for variety in most of my decks these days.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I did this a while back when I was really studying Atman, how to beat Atman. There are very few three strength ice in the deck. I mean, Architect came out, sure, but in general, if you look at it, there aren't that many. And three strength is just a good solid strength to deal with. And most people are playing Mimic to deal with sentries, and admins are going on four. So I don't know. Anyway, it's a neat card. It's a staple. It'll be good till the end of time. Um,
Agreed.
Yep. Same with Quandary. I mean, it's the same basic principle, just the cheap and the run. It's a little parasite prone, but it's you know whatever. It does its job more times than not. Even a one credit tax on like a zoo for them to pay an extra credit to trash one of these things, it ends up costing a lot over the course of the game. Pop up is pretty standard in almost every NBN deck, at least near Earth Hub deck, just because the game is so fast. And to answer the larger question, um, I can get away with 10 ice for two reasons. Number one, the game's fast because I'm drawing so many cards because of either daily business show Jackson or installing and my every turn I'm drawing obviously too. So I get through the deck pretty fast. It's only really dicey for the starting hand, but it's also like Jinteki. It's not uncommon to see a Jinteki build with only 10 ice or so because you really don't mind the runner getting accesses. If I have two dedicated response teams sitting in a remote that they haven't checked because there's literally eight other remotes built and they don't know where to run, Well, now as soon as they hit a TGBT or a snare in R&D, they can probably lose the game. So from that sense, I don't mind them getting R&D accesses. I have 5 cards I can punish them pretty hard in R&D if I'm prepared with this card. Dedicated response team, that is. So you can get away with a little bit of less ice. You can get away with a little bit of leakier ice if you have a way of punishing them for doing it. And also, not to mention, Manhunt, which will I think it deserves its own little section in this thing here. But that's another tax every single time they run. So even if I don't have any ice, they're not super excited to run against Manhunt to pay another 2 credits. Um, so yeah, I think that's how I can get away with it. The Data Raven's obviously for tagging. Um, it's a monster. And then Toll Booth, I don't res it very often actually, and it might be the one card that might move out. I don't know. Maybe I don't need it. But it's hard to not think that at some games I won't want to Toll Booth somewhere.
Yeah, look, so on your ice selection, I really like what you've done. It's an inviting suite. You know, like you're gonna be able to get a hard stop maybe at the beginning with the wall of static and a quandary. You know, maybe just long enough for you to either get one Astro down to apply some pressure.
Yeah,
Um,
and even Data Raven functions as ETR, right?
right. You know, you have the pop-up windows, which you know we said before. They really tie into your economy choice in this deck, so they fit nicely. Um, Data Raven, it's really nice to see this card coming out again. Um, NBN has moved away from their. This used to be their staple ice. You know, this would slow people down. Um, I know Caleb would use this all the time. He's saying this was the best ice he'd ever used. You know, a cycle and a bit ago, because it people didn't want to take that tag in a Scorch world.
Mm-hmm.
As we've seen Scorch slowly slip, there's real no reason to have a front-loaded tag ability here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but obviously, this deck, you know, utilizes that. The one I am curious about is the toll booth being so hefty to res at 8, and you know, I think you did touch on that, saying it's not an everyday res. So
Yeah, and it might not stay, to be honest. I mean,
yeah.
maybe it's another wall static. Maybe that's better.
The you know, the choice or the question here that I think the people need to know from you is architect. You've decided to leave it off. Like I know you know you're tight with influence, but you look at a deck like this that installs so much that you know that so many of these assets are going to be trashed. Um, so to be able to do some kind of wonky installs from R&D or HQ archives, any reason you decided to kind of, you know, part ways with the architect?
Yeah, well, I mean, my God, man, I already feel bad enough playing 17 influence in the Earth. um, but it's just that I think you know me well enough, and my all people who have seen my videos and heard me talk about this game enough know that I like to push the envelope, try new things,
Right, right.
try to get away from the norm. And it's funny because something like Architect before Worlds, it was an innovative idea, and that's what's so cool about the game is it changes so fast. So it's fun to play something different in that sense. And yeah, man, if I could fit like 3 architects in here, it'd just be stupid. So um, the snare DRT combo is 15 influence in itself, and I think it's fun enough to play that and strong enough, even not even just fun enough, but strong enough that it does enough work. And I don't necessarily need Architect to do the work. I've compensated with interns in archive memories a little bit there to give me that recursion. So,
Right.
um,
And you know, as a flip side to that, it's a nice way leaving architect out, um, because like you look right here, your century is a data raven. So most people are, you know, are comfortable playing a mimic and running. because if they're going to hit that sentry, they're not going to let it trigger. You, you know, you're kind of going against the grain, right? Like Mimic is now almost in, or it still is in every deck, even more so because of Architect. But now you're not playing Architect, so like you're swimming against the meta.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I literally played games too where I've had two pop-up windows on R&D, and the runner couldn't find their sentry, and they never ran them because they're like, man, I was afraid of Architect all game long. I didn't want to hit it.
Yeah,
So everyone expects the Architect, and a lot of times you won't even see people face check things until they have that sentry breaker out,
right.
and that's pretty strong.
So good ice sweet. You're not hard ending the run, um, in a lot of places there. Um, it's that MBN style that's come through, and we'll get to more of that reasoning behind it, mostly because the manhunt tax.
Hmm.
Um, you decided to end your influence with a single copy of Archive Memories. This is something I think we had a big discussion about what the last card in this deck should be. So Archive Memories made the cut.
Yeah, it did. Right now, I mean, it could change, but it seems like a good fit. Before the last two influence were actually used on encryption protocol, which is a beautiful card in this deck. I mean, it's like it works so good in this deck, but ultimately, I decided Manhunt does it better, and it didn't cost influence. So anyway, and plus it saved me a little deck space, so I compressed it into archive memories, and I just moved the archive memories to the interns. People saw that, but just because this is my three recursion cards, other than Jackson, and it's a very important part of the deck because interns will allow me to bring back maybe like a daily business show or maybe a pad campaign. Usually it won't be for pad campaigns, but daily business show or obviously a Sansan can come back or a dedicated response team. Some super high priority asset that they feel like they have to trash. And when I can recurse these things back in the game over and over, and then install them and draw another card, which is likely to be an asset, something else they have to trash, um, it becomes very overwhelming for the runner, as mentioned before. So the recursion is an important part of that. It keeps the pressure on the runner to keep running remotes. And archive memories obviously gives me a little bit more versatility than interns in that I can get any card back. So I could get a piece of ice if I really needed it. But ultimately, I think it's going to be more important for maybe cards like Diversified Portfolio to get some money, Manhunt, or Psychographics, which can be, if the runner decides to go tag me, Psychographics is huge for that. So it ultimately can give me like two Psychographics in the deck, as well as being able to recurse assets. So it seems like a good fit. Recursion is so strong in this deck as it is. I'm willing to pay extra influence to have flexibility in my recursion. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I do think that was the smart choice. Some people are going to think, I know we went back and forth on reclamation order and stuff, but in the end, Archive Memories won out just for the versatility of not spending both clicks, and overloading your hand, which you probably just have to discard some of that stuff again. You're able to archive memories for that quick psychographics, right? Like, at the beginning of the game, you really don't know how the game is going. If you need to pitch the psychographics, okay, you do have a way to pull that back later on. You manhunt, is probably a big part of this deck. You know, archives allows you to pull that back quickly if you need it without having to spend the double clicks, right? Like the interns are good, but the archives is going to give you that quick versatility snap.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes maybe you look at the the interns themselves, and that's install a card from archives to HQ. we have archive memories, which is just moving it to HQ. So you're able to archive memories, maybe a snare back in HQ if you need that little extra protection against, a criminal runner that's coming HQ heavy, and they've already hit your snare. So it really rounds out the recursion versatility. Like you've pointed out, I think it's a beautiful choice.
Those are all excellent points. I totally agree with everything you said.
Um, while we're touching on the last of it there, um, do you want to talk about why you didn't put hostile infrastructure in, or do you want to talk about the cards that didn't get put in at the end?
Yeah, no, I think it's a decent time to touch on hostile because it fits in with the last two influence. And I was actually going to make a point that I think hostile infrastructure would be a really great call for that last two influence. It'd be fine. I started the deck with it, and it really, I mean, the idea is repeating myself, but to get the hammer the point home, the idea is to make it really painful to run remotes and make it so they have to run remotes. So not only is it painful to run them, but that they have to run them. And obviously, hostile infrastructure. There's very few things in the game that are more painful than taking damage. So it's huge for that. Plus, actually, another intangible benefit of it is that it's a 5 res cost. So it gets you that siphon protection too. In a deck where you have limited ice, sometimes you start a game against criminal without ice. So you put down like I try to get maybe a daily business show and a dedicated response team or a 2-pad campaigns down if I'm going to leave HQ open. That way I can get something rezzed if they come in with the siphon. So from that sense, I think there's a lot of nice reasons to play a card like Hostile Infrastructure, and it would work here. But ultimately, the versatility of Archive Memories seems to be pulling me.
Yeah, and I think if someone out there wants to experiment, um, this is the one in and out slot that that you can experiment with. If you want to try Reclamation Order or have some other two influence splash, this is pretty much the only wiggle room that you're left with. But taking archive memories out is probably not your best choice. The hostile infrastructure is great, but remember, you're only putting in one copy of it, and usually when you do that, you don't see it.
Yeah.
And I know that seems weird because we have one copy of archive memories, but we're not relying on archive memories as the only piece of recursion. I mean, archive memories once spent, remember, can be recycled again with the Jacksons.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you need to, you have a way to just get that one back in. And it's not the linchpin of the deck, right? So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it's mess around with it. I think there's room to try. I mean, you could even try make it a 2 influence ice if you wanted, and have another piece of ice for protection. So there's things you can do there.
yeah, if you wanted to try that Anarch or Architect,
Plus,
there's
well, and another
there's
thing
room
too
there.
is, sorry to cut you off there. Daily business show helps you find the one that's a little bit better too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a nice little bonus there.
Cool. So there's your along with Jackson, there's your recursion cards right there.
Yep.
Um, Dipping into, I think we already touched on diversified portfolio, because you're playing horizontal. It's another great economy card. Um,
It's one of the best in the game if
yeah,
you have a good setup.
and that really rounds out a good number of economy. You got what's that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but 10 economy cards here, and I think that's where you want to be. You sitting in about the 9 range. 9 is comfortable for economy wise.
Yeah, depending on the deck, obviously, but the cool thing about this deck is it doesn't need a lot of money. I'm not trying to land a mid seasons. I'm not trying to trace really. I mean, Manhunt is not really like a trace I'm boosting very often.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of just a tax. and then I can win the game on 6 credits with a DRT and snare.
Yeah,
And
like
then
you just basically want the money to pay for snare when that goes. So
yeah, yep. I'm just trying to keep my trying to stay on 4 to 6 credits all game, and that's very attainable because obviously Sansan is a 6 res cost too. So we'll say six, basically 4 to 8 credits is my range. And with this package, it seems like I'm able to stay at 4 to 8. And actually, as I say that, I'm almost convincing myself to take out this toll booth, especially with Manhunt in the deck, because the Manhunt is doing. Let's just well, okay. I'm going to talk about psychographics quick, and then I'll get to Manhunt. Psychographics is basically for the people that decide to go tag me, which there will be some. Honestly, most people don't. From what I've seen, most people will shed tags and trash remotes. They play very protective. People don't want to die, so they will shed tags. However, there are a percentage of people, whether it's game state or play style, that will just simply go tag me, and that's fine. It's actually it's probably best that if I don't have the DRTs out, obviously, that they do that. But psychographics can then just win me the game. And with Daily Business Show, I'm trying to find it with that. And as you made a great point, Jamieson, archive memories can allow me to bring it back. If I get it early, I can pitch it and then get it later. So um, good as a one of. I would love to have two, but deck space keeps me at one.
yeah, that's so true. Um, I don't think there's anything else to say about psychographics. I think it's a perfect choice. Um, y- y- it's a great tag punishment in it's not really tag punishment. You're just utilizing the tags if someone goes to camp. Um, Obviously you could have put in a closed accounts here. You could have, done some other different ways to utilize the tag. But I don't think there's a better way with the psychographics, especially because it pairs so well with the Beals, right? Like,
Yeah, definitely. And
if you get in a pinch, I know that it's few and far between, but if you get in a pinch situation and say your Sansans are gone or they've stolen your Astros, um, psychographics can potentially lift you out of a bind, and you can over advance that Beal for a little more.
definitely. Exactly. And another point too is a lot of times you just need to get the Astro train started. So even if they're on 3 tags and you can't do a big Beal score, at least maybe you can get an Astro scored in 2 clicks, and
Mm-hmm.
now you're off and running. So yeah, it's a power card. I mean, it's 3 influence for a reason. It's a monster card. It can be a monster card, and it's one of those cards it's so good when it works, but most times it's probably not going to work for you. But worth at least, in my opinion, one card slot for that time it does work because it'll win you the game.
Yeah, and also for the intimidation factor too. If somebody sees it,
Exactly. They're going to say, "Crap! Now I can't float tags," and now
like
it plays into my playstyle.
because you're not playing the obvious psychographics pair, which is mid-season. So then these people start getting ready for some kind of mid-season if you see psychographics. So you're playing that whole mind game aspect with what's in your deck at that point.
Yep, totally. Yeah, people don't expect this deck, which is awesome. So last card here, Manhunt, and I actually started the deck without Manhunt, and now it's come to maybe be my favorite card in this deck. I had City Surveillance, which actually works decently, but there's two problems with it. Number one, it can be trashed, which is not horrible because it taxes the runner. But I think the when it's trashed, obviously it doesn't work anymore, so it's done. And then I have to recurse it. So that was okay. Like it functioned as a decent tax. If I could get a piece of ice in front of it, a lot of times it would really like hamper the runner. It could throw their whole game off. But for the most part, I found I was either not resing it or it was just getting trash and I was losing the battle of the money because I was spending five and then they would spend one to avoid the tag and then three to trash it. So Manhunt, I realized, basically does the same exact thing, but it's going to deter them from making runs, which is ultimately going to deter them from trashing my assets, which is going to just give me more board position to take over. And the biggest challenge I was coming up against with City Surveillance was Wizard and Imp. And basically, Wizard would just crush me because he would come in and trash all my stuff for free or virtually free, and that was it. And I couldn't play diversified portfolio. I couldn't make my Sands work. My DRTs were dead. Nothing was working. The beauty of Manhunt is that no matter what they do, they're going to have to take this trace, and they're not scoring agendas when they trash assets, so they will have to face this trace. If I'm winning the econ war, they're going to be really not excited to run because if they, let's say I have a whole bunch of face down assets on the board, they know I'm playing dedicated response team, and they go and they run a Sansan. Now I put a tag on them. If they pick wrong, if they miss, if they pick anything other than a dedicated response team, they're going to get a tag and they're going to take damage. And just a great place to be. The runner gets they get in a no-win situation. And anyway, Manhunt just seems to be the icing on the cake for this deck, and I've played with it a few times, and I'm really really excited. And last comment before I flip it over to you, Jamieson. Um, Similar to dedicated response team, when I saw Manhunt, I said, "Bam! This is a monster." I said, "This card is going to be huge," but I haven't until now. Not that other people haven't done it, but I haven't seen this card be a monster,
Right.
and I believe in this deck it is.
I think Manhunt is, you know, I think it's a genius choice. So, I hope you're sitting over there patting yourself on the back because, like, in all honesty, man, I think it plays both ways. What you're doing with Manhunt is not putting all your eggs into one basket. So, what I mean by that is Manhunt does three things. Um, A, we don't know going forward if something's going to come out where all of a sudden the runner is going to start utilizing currents a lot more. So you're putting a current in your deck that fits. You're not forcing a current in your deck. This fits the play style. So right away you're able to cancel currents if you so need to. Second is there are other ways to tag. Bernice Mai, other pieces of ice that tag. There are so many ways that you could have gone with these last three spots, especially in NBN. What does NBN do? It tags. But, you're not getting the full robust suite because if you want to play standard NBN Near Earth Hub, this is a tax every time they run. So you're playing a taxing game, you're playing a tagging game, and you have the option to cancel currents if needed. Manhunt is covering three things for the price of one card, three slots.
Yeah, totally. Good calls there. Super good calls there.
And I've seen you play this card so very efficiently where I think I've only ever seen you bump the trace twice. They're just people are running in like that would change. I know both those games you weren't playing against a linked runner, so someone was paying two times to match the trace every time. But even with a linked runner, do you think you're bumping it very much, or are you just going to let them pay the one off?
Yeah, most times I probably won't, but it's simply for the tax. I mean, if they take a tag, great, but most likely, they're not going to want to. Like you said, if they've seen Psycho or if they've seen Dedicated Response Team, they don't want to mess with tags. So, even without or even without manhunt, the amount of taxing it puts on the runner to trash all these assets adds up significantly.
Mm.
So even adding one extra credit on a linked runner, yes, that's going to compound a lot.
Um, can you walk through, uh, Greg? For there's a couple people out there that are going to look at this deck. You know, they're going to play it, and timing structure is everything in Netrunner now. You want to talk about the proper timings that manhunt triggers and when to res up your other cards
Oh yeah,
to do the synergy with it, because
yeah,
that is going to be very very important with this deck.
yeah. Great question. I'm really glad you mentioned that actually. Two things to really remember regarding the timing of things. So remember, as Corp, you always have last action. That means that the runner has to have committed to making an access, and now you have the chance to res things. So you can't, in other words, runner runs remote. They say access. You now say, hold on, and you can res dedicated response team or two dedicated response teams. They can't say, oh, sorry, no, I don't want to access anymore. Sorry, nope, you're committed. So it's really important that you communicate that as the corp to the runner, because a lot of people simply don't know the timing structure, or maybe will try to be shisty with it. I don't know. So just say, remember I have last action. Do you want to access? Yes, great. I'm going to res this. Boom. And if they argue with you, bring out the rule book. So that's the first thing, is res the DRT at that point, because that's when they're either going to hit the snare or the TGBT. You don't want to res it anytime before that. There's no reason to. Last thing is the manhunt, which actually fits um, with that as well, with the timing structure, because this takes place first time a run is successful. So it's going to hit the same time as an ash would. They're going to before access. Actually you would res the DRT first, technically, and then you would trigger manhunt, and then they would access. So that's how it works. And that's an important distinction to know, because as I think as we get more and more cards and more intricacies in the game, it's going to be more important to know those timings. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more important right now than memorizing that timing structure and when these events can take place, and make sure that you're giving. Always ask. Get in the habit of, if somebody runs a remote server on your, if you're playing the corporation, and you don't have a single piece of ice there, and they say run there, you should every time get in the habit of saying, do you want to access? Are you accessing?
Yep.
And that's just going to drill that timing structure into your head, because if you don't get that timing structure right, you're not going to utilize the dedicated response team combo properly. You're not going to be able to use the manhunt current properly to give them the tag, you know, the, and to synergize there.
Yeah, definitely. As if you're going to play this deck as the corp, you have to know the timing structure and expect that you might have to explain it to a few runners too, because not everyone knows it. So it's good. In that sense, it's a good. I guess it's a good deck to help learn you the rules too.
So
So
that pretty much wraps up this deck. I think you've birthed a new child here. Um, what name's going on the birth certificate?
I don't know. I should name it after the person who inspired me to play it. I can't say I birthed this thing, but I played against somebody who played this against me. As I mentioned, they whooped me a few times with it, and that inspired me. It's definitely different from what they played. I've made enough changes where I can say this is fairly original. It's not a total original, but I can say I've tested it enough, as always, before I publish these things. I've tested this deck enough for the current meta and the way, at least that people think, this is going to throw people off. They're not going to know how to play against it, and you're going to get a lot of these, maybe not easy wins, but you're going to get a lot of wins with this deck if you play it right. And also it's different, and for that it's fun. So I'm having a great time with this. I can't wait to put it into action tomorrow night. Put the ultimate test in the Stim Hack League finals. So I mean, I'm that confident in it that I bring it to a championship game.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything else for you, Greg, unless you want to wrap up with final thoughts or
No, that's a
anything else.
wrap for me, man. I flipped back and forth back to my OBS screen here once or twice, so I'm ready to call it. It's been a great chat.
Perfect. Well, guys, as always, make sure you throw Greg some questions down below if you have any in the chats, and he's usually very good at answering them down there. Thanks a bunch for your time, and have a great holidays.
Over and out.